Hello everyone, my name is David McMurdo and welcome to my channel where I reveal the spiritual in everything. Subscribe because I upload a new video every single weekday, I host a public live stream every single Saturday, and I host another live stream on the Sunday for those that support me on Patreon. I'm here on a mission to spread the message of experiential spirituality because it's a message that has helped many souls in the past and it's a message that I know can help many more souls in the future. So if you want to help me on my mission, then you can support me on Patreon for £5 or more a month, for which you will gain access to my Patreon blog, which includes the aforementioned Patreon live streams, and for which you will receive a copy of my book, Experiential Spirituality, The Mystic Answer to Everything, in PDF format. And I'm always trying to think of more Patreon rewards to give those that support me on Patreon. So just the other night, I added my rendition of the Gospel of Thomas to my Patreon blog so that those that support me can download it anytime they like. And thank you very much to those of you that got in early and already support me on Patreon. I very much appreciate it because without you this kind of daily content just wouldn't be possible, and that's part of the reason I'm always trying to think of more rewards to give you guys on Patreon. Now today I'm going to be speaking on the subject of karma. Karma is a Sanskrit term that literally means action, though its significance and true meaning within the context of spirituality has been hotly debated for a very long time now. And karma is one of those dharmic terms that has thoroughly permeated popular consciousness. And so, for example, you'll often see the word karma used on social media, and in such contexts, the word karma is almost always used to refer to a vague form of cosmic justice. So if one soul wrongs another and then later on endures some kind of misfortune, some will say that is their karma. But what you'll notice is that there is usually no discernible link between their wrongdoing and the apparent justice that the universe meted out to them. Such a connection exists primarily in the interpretation, or perhaps even the wishful thinking, of certain observers. But really, karma is nothing more than cause and effect. So let's say that having recorded this video, I realized that I'm hungry. So I go through to my kitchen, I turn the oven on, I take a tray, I put a frozen meal on the tray because that's the kind of diet I have. I put the tray in the oven and I leave it for an hour. After that hour has passed, I go through to my kitchen, I open the oven, and instead of getting oven gloves or a towel or anything to protect my hands, I simply grab that tray after it's been in a hot oven for an hour. Of course, I'm going to burn myself. That would be my karma. Me burning myself would be the direct consequence of my choices up to that point. So when you understand that karma is nothing more than cause and effect, you understand that not only is it perfectly understandable within the context of most instances, it's actually also perfectly foreseeable in most cases. Now, because karma is so massively misunderstood, there are many that suppose that it is a concept that is completely incompatible with the teachings of the Abrahamic traditions. But when you understand that karma is nothing more than cause and effect, you realize that not only is it not incompatible with the teachings of the Abrahamic traditions, the Abrahamic traditions actually repeatedly affirm it themselves in their own way. And so, for example, in his letter to the Galatians, in chapter 6, the Apostle Paul wrote, "God is not mocked. What a man sows, he will reap." And there could hardly be a more perfect summary of karma than that. The real ambiguities concerning karma come in not when you're considering karma within the context of a single instant or even a single lifetime, but when you're considering karma across the course of multiple supposed lifetimes and when you're involving ideas like reincarnation. And so within the Dharmic traditions, it's quite commonly held that if a soul is born into some kind of misfortune, whether they have some kind of physical deformity or whether they are merely born into poverty, it's the direct result of their negative karma. It's the direct result of actions that they took in a past life. And the reverse is also true, of course. If a soul is born into a particularly handsome or beautiful physical form, or if they're born into great wealth, it is believed that that is the direct consequence of good actions that they performed within a past life. Now notice that in this context, karma is still cause and effect. It's just that it's cause and effect that no longer involves physical rules that we're all very well aware of. It's cause and effect that is necessarily invoking metaphysical rules that for the most part are necessarily going to be mysterious to us. Now, I always emphasize on this channel that we must be honest about what we know and what we don't know. And I will also emphasize that where we cannot know something, there's very little point troubling ourselves over it. In most cases, we simply can't know what rules might govern karma across multiple lifetimes. We can't know exactly what kind of action would lead a soul to be born in their next life in some form of misfortune, or what that misfortune would be, and what rules dictate that precisely. That's beyond our knowing, and therefore it's not worth troubling ourselves over. Now, personally, I do believe that. I do believe that the circumstances of a soul's birth are the direct result of actions that they took in a past life. But I emphasize the word believe there. Do I know that? No, because I have no way of knowing that. It's something that I believe for reasons that aren't really relevant to this video, and frankly what I believe is irrelevant for the most part anyway. All that matters is what you personally can experience, and it's worth noting that in many cases this belief that souls are born into misfortune of various kinds due to evil acts that they performed in the past, quite often it results in negative consequences, because within the Dharmic traditions there is quite a prevalent attitude that if one is born into misfortune because of their own past deeds, then they necessarily deserve that misfortune, and that leads some to conclude that those people shouldn't be helped because they're merely working out their own karma. Now, I completely disagree with that kind of attitude. Even if we knew for sure that souls were born into misfortune because of evil deeds that they performed in the past, that does not then mean that we should be dismissive of them and uncaring of them. On the contrary, if one has that kind of dismissive and uncaring attitude because a soul is born in poverty, then one is merely accruing their own bad karma. And what are your circumstances going to look like in the past and in the next life? And so, as ever, when you're considering karma in the context of multiple lifetimes, when you're involving ideas like reincarnation, of course it's more exciting to the majority of souls, but as ever it's not very useful. Whenever you're dealing with this kind of subject, this subject that necessarily involves a lot of speculation, it's just not very useful to think about it over much. First of all, these things are beyond our knowing, and second of all contemplating this kind of karma, or karma in this context, is going to do is give your mind an excuse to go off on some flight of fancy. And while your mind is going off on some flight of fancy, you're necessarily neglecting more important matters. And besides, while karma in the context of multiple lifetimes may be more obviously exciting, there are plenty of interesting questions to ask yourself concerning karma within the context of a single instant or a single lifetime. For example, since karma is cause and effect, could not one consciously become an instrument of karma? If someone wrongs me and I avenge myself, am I not myself the hand of God? Am I not myself the hand of karma? Some would say yes. There are many in the Dharma traditions, and there have been historically, that have believed just that and have acted according to that belief. Of course, the Christian scriptures would say differently on that matter, because both the Old Testament and especially the New Testament emphasize that vengeance belongs to God alone. Those scriptures would emphasize, to use Dharmic terminology, those scriptures would emphasize that karma is not ours to mete out, essentially. It's not for us to determine the consequences for another soul in that way. So there are all kinds of fascinating questions concerning karma, and I would encourage you to contemplate the subject, but not over much, because I don't think it's the most tremendously important subject. Certainly not as important as some might make out. I think the reason that karma is such a popular subject is simply because, again, it does lend itself very easily to leading souls on flights of fancy. It enables them to speculate on all kinds of matters involving past and future lives and things like that, but it's not really practically useful. Even if it was absolutely true that your deeds in one life determine the circumstances that you're born in the next life, what would still be important is what you're doing in this life. And so that's one thing we can all agree on, is that whatever truths might lie beyond our knowing, what really matters is the way that we live here and now. So thank you very much for watching, everyone. Be sure to subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Be sure to like the video, and be sure to leave a comment, because I'd love to hear your thoughts on this most fascinating subject. And I will see you tomorrow.